look into camera to you?
I say look toward the Stan.
Okay, Stan. Hey, I'm Stan Evans. I am the first and only black snowboard photographer that, at least that I know of. I don't know, you can probably Google and see if there's any others, but I think I'm pretty much it, which kind of sad to say, but hopefully we're here to inspire a new generation of black kids to become photographers and enjoy snowboarding. So I'm super honored that Snowboarder and you guys had me here to talk about my experiences in snowboarding, the highs, the lows, the people and places and things I got to experiences. Yeah, just, I mean, snowboarding is great, and there's a lot of work to be done considering the movement that we have right now as far as Black Lives Matter and getting more equality and people on the hill. And so I'm here to talk about it and see what we can do.
Nice. For those of you who might not be familiar as much with your work, you've got a run sheet. You've been around for some shit. I mean, what are some of, like, in your experience, maybe some of your more notable things?
Geez, where do we even start? I mean, obviously the big thing most people know is like Chad's Gap, the big session that went down with Travis Rice and Roman DeMarchi in the Absinthe films. I had some great runs with urban snowboarding with Dan Breezy and, Bodie Merrill, Phil Demianakis. Had some great photos of shooting different types of women for Stance, snowboard movie that I produced and shot photos of in 2009. That was great times working with Gretchen Bleiler, Raywin Reed, Kimi Fasani. Let's see, I'm trying to think what else has been pivotal in my career. I mean, I've worked with great people. I've worked with Tina Basic, I worked with Jeff Brushy, all the way to, I don't know, like I'm trying to think, like new kids nowadays that like are super fun. Like, I mean, I hang out with Toby Miller. I haven't shot him yet, but we'll get there. But I love him. I love that kid's energy. Yeah. He's doing great stuff. I'm like super curious about Zeb Powell. It's really cool seeing what he's doing for the future of snowboarding and getting black representation back in the face, because it's been kind of a gap. Like, I feel like there's been a huge gap since Kier and Ben, and it's nice to see a little representation getting back on, and it gets me excited. It gets me excited about snowboarding. Like, damn, I came out of retirement. Like, Zeb's got me stoked.
Yeah. I'm curious because we've been kind of flipping through a lot of old mags, and you also have like a little bit of editorial in early mags too, and from the start, someone who has been a promoter of black storytelling within snowboarding. So maybe what was your experience like with crafting that first story that I saw anyway, which is like probably ostensibly the first ever coverage of just like a black snowboard feature?
Yeah, so here's the funny thing, and I got started, and I kind of went on to talk. I've been shooting photos of snowboarding since 1988. I got my first photo published in 1994, and I'm not gonna lie, it was not an easy road for me being a black snowboard photographer, because you'd say it and people would laugh. Like, people were just like, ha, you're a black snowboard photographer? Who are you kidding? And I'm like, no, really, actually, that's what I do, or what I want to do. That was like my dream as a kid, like, so it's hard thinking about being that kid and having that dream and having people laugh in your face.
Yeah.
So it kind of puts this determination for you, right? And so part of fueling that determination is seeing someone like Russell Winfield. He was the first black pro snowboarder I ever saw, and like, I think it was, I was just getting into college, right? And so he was just seeing that and just seeing like, oh man, there's a possibility. Like, seeing that reputation, like, you have to see it to be it. And so seeing Russ, there he is back there, made me realize that a dream of mine of being a black snowboard photographer was possible, And so going to school, seeing all that stuff, and as I worked through the years, publishing a bunch of photos, it started to get to a point where there actually was a crew, a kind of crew of smaller, of black snowboarders. There was Amon, there was Kier, there was Ben, and as I was getting better at my career, I had the actual ability to be able to like talk to you guys at Snowboard and be like, hey man, I want to do these trips. I want to get all the black snowboarders together for a trip. And this is 2000, like this is 20 years ago. And they actually did it. They were like, go for it, man. Like, I think honestly probably people were just like, okay, go for it. But literally, like, and the other guy was Damon Morris. So he works for North Face these days. And we all got together. We rented a Suburban and we traveled through Montana. We started Montana. We went to Big Sky. We went to the Yellowstone Club, which is funny because that is like the most rich hoity-toity like thing. But they like had us there because they liked my photos and they liked what I had done because I'd shot a photo essay for Snowboarder before and it came out super well. So we went there. We went to Jackson Hole, and like man, just going to the lift line in Jackson Hole and seeing like all these brothers together on the hill, like people were tripping out because just no one had ever seen anything like it, you know. And it's not to say that like it was a beautiful thing and a really eye-opening thing because some people were afraid and some people were enthusiastic. And so seeing that thing of like people like hell yeah, and people being like, ooh, what are they doing here?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And like it was like that. It's like it was an interesting dichotomy of thing of that. But then people would see them on the hill and like, dude, we were riding with Ken and Kier and Ben. They were ripping.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you see these black dudes and they're ripping. People were like, holy shit. You know, like they're ripping.
Yeah.
And so it was like a really cool, interesting. So that got me thinking about the possibilities of what could be.
Yeah.
And seeing that and being where I am now, it's like I wanted to create that experience for more black people.
Sure.
You know, it's like if I can have that joy on the hill, we can all have that fun on the hill together. We can get people who look like us and talk like us and see that, and we're having joy on the hill. We should get more people like us on the hill, having joy, sharing these experiences, sharing the beauty of the mountains. Because I grew up in Alaska. Like I was like very fortunate, you know, like to witness the beauty of a place like that at such a young age. And it created such an impression that's a lifelong narrative. Like I love the outdoors.
Yeah.
And so because I'm black and people aren't used to hearing that, like I want to tell any person, I want to go shout to the mountaintops that like one, black people really do enjoy this stuff, and to tell and show other black people, here's this thing out here that maybe you're not experiencing or seeing or thing like that. It can bring you joy, it can bring you love, it can bring you peace. Like literally once a week I work in LA now, like shooting portraits, celebrities, commercial work. But once a week I go and do something in the outdoors, and it settles me down and it gets me into a right place and the right frame of mind. And that is the joy of nature and snowboarding that like everyone should have. Everyone should have an opportunity too.
So I'm curious to hear about your start in getting into snowboarding, being from Alaska, and maybe adding a little bit of detail there.
Okay. So here's the funny thing. Like, I mean, I was a nerdy black kid, straight up. I was into art and writing poetry and just like weird shit like that. I was okay at sports, but I wasn't great. Thing of that. And I had a photography teacher, Miss Jackson, sorry. And at 15 years old, she introduced me to photography, and I was like pretty good at it. You know, like I was pretty good. And like that's the thing of like interesting of like encouraging thing, that mentorship and trying to get people like the possibilities of what they can do. She didn't look at me or judge me and be like, oh, you can't do this and that. She was like encouraging. She's like, hey, you can do this. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, you can make a living as a photographer doing this. And she's like, what do you mean? She's like, go look at magazine stands. And I was like, those are all shot by photographers. I was like, oh, and it's like a whole new world to me. Like I just, honestly, as a black kid, no one had really told me about these career paths of looking at things where you can like go do art and creative work. So she steered me on that path. So I started taking photos of my friends who's snowboarding. Like, I mean, I think my first photo was a barfoot twin tip. Like, and I laid down on the ground and the guy jumped right over me. I was trying to find it for my portfolio, but I could not find it. But it was like, that was my first photo of snowboarding, like in '88. And I was like, this is cool, man. This is like the best thing. And literally from doing that, she encouraged me, and like I took the next photo class. And she was like, you know, this is what you should do. And I was like, oh my God, this is totally what I should do.
Yeah.
And so I went and looked around at schools, and Montana State was the school that you could go and get a get a photography degree, a bachelor's degree in photography. And it was close to the mountains. It was close to Bridger Bowl and Big Sky. So I literally like lined up. I was like, where can I get a photo degree? Where can I go and be 30 minutes from the mountains? Yeah, and I was still skiing at the time. Like, I'll be completely transparent about that. I was throwing back scratchers and daffies. But it got me into it. And like, honestly, like just at the time, and I'd done snowboarding, and snowboarding just looked cooler. It was like a lot more fun. And so I started shooting more friends of like Nell Boshoff and Justin Mooney and Annie Fast Annie Fast was my intern.
Wow.
If you really want to like get right down and talk to the thing. And it was just a fun thing. So then I got into snowboarding and I started doing more snowboarding and skiing, and I eventually just switched over. And literally kind of what started was in 99, I shot Ride's catalog. And I started shooting. It's actually right back there behind you.
Wow.
There, you can like pull it out of that black case right there. And so I started doing it and started making a decent living. But within that, I started working for this magazine called Plow. And it was like before I'd even graduated. Like I was still in school. Like, and it was like funny because here's the thing that people don't really understand. Like I was working school. I had what was it? Work study. There we go. So I was doing work study, and then I had another job, and I was going to school. So like I was doing all these things, and it wasn't like like I just came off like it. So like I was doing a lot, and so I had cool bosses who would let me go take off weekends for my restaurant jobs or things like that, and go shoot photos. Like my first heli trip, I worked in Bozeman, Montana. I worked for a year at this place called the Pickle Barrel. I delivered sandwiches and made sandwiches, and I stayed for a whole year so I could go to heli trip to Alaska for 2 weeks. Blew all that money of a year's worth of stuff like in 2 weeks, like that. And like so, it's just funny. So my first heli trip was like paid for by sandwiches, like straight up, And so that's how much I loved snowboarding, and photography. And so I think that's the thing that's the basis here, because we're like, oh, it's a disenfranchised, it's such an expensive sport. If you find something that you love, you find a way to do it, right?
Yeah.
And so I found a way, because I loved snowboarding so much in photography. Like photography is really my first love, but I loved the symbiotic nature of both, that I found ways to do it. I mean, I just worked crazy jobs, like, like landscaping. I worked in worked ag econ office at in Montana State, and it was pretty funny because there was this professor. He was an ag econ professor, and this country wrangler wearing dude was the guy who took me under his wing, and it really helped me looking at how not to judge people, and the opportunities that people would give me, just because they saw my desire of wanting to learn and want to do it. And he was such a nice dude. I'm like, we'd see us walking down the hall, and he's wearing Wranglers and cowboy boots. And I had dreadlocks at the time, and I'm 6'2" black man. We were the oddest couple walking through, and I was his assistant.
Yeah.
So just hearing that and seeing people who see what you want to get. And same thing with the guy at the restaurant, it was the same Mark Spencer. And he literally would give me 2 weeks off to go the photos you see of the West Beach Classic. That's when I was working restaurants. And he would give me 2 weeks. I'd go and drive my ass to Canada, go shoot, come back, and then I'd go back to waiting tables. And he just oh, Stan, you're back. We'll put you on the schedule. And he was just cool because he saw what I wanted to do. He saw that I wanted to do photography and things like that. And he was just dude, it's time, as much time as you need to go do what you need to do. You come back here, you still got a job.
When did that flip switch to being more of okay, this is what I do now? How did you transition out of that restaurant kind of hustle into here we are? And tied into that, this is a dense question, but it's were you having an effect where people were seeing your photos and meeting you second? And was there kind of an interaction there that you had? Did you feel this is a Stan Evans photo, someone meets you and they're oh shit, you're black?
Well, I have those, but I'll tell you the moment it switched.
Yeah.
I was at Mount Hood. I was shooting for Ride Snowboards. I was shooting Justin Mooney and everything like that. And my sister got killed by a drunk driver. I found out Mount Hood, shooting on that shoot. I cried my eyes out and drove home all the way to Montana. I went to her funeral. My sister had a little bit of insurance policy, and from that I had maybe $5,000. I came home and quit my job because it was get busy living or looking at how quickly you can die. And if you're not living life to the fullest of the opportunity like that, of having your sister taken away by a drunk driver, you really realize really quickly, I was I didn't want to stand around waiting tables anymore. So I was either going to make it or break it. And literally that's when I quit. I came home, I quit all my jobs, and I went straight into photography. I was just I'm just going to do this.
Yeah. And I feel what kind of, what was the trip that you sort of can remember heading into first and being do you remember the energy surrounding that, and were you able to hold on to that for a long, do you feel you still hold on to that energy?
I mean, honestly, that getting all the black snowboarders together for doing a trip, like literally that was the first thing where like I've made it a thing because I made this happen. Like no one else wanted that besides me,
Sure.
you know? So getting that done in that landscape of getting all these black people together to go snowboarding, like it was like, it's the thing that like wasn't supposed to happen
Yeah.
and I made it happen. So that was like kind of like the thing of like, okay, I've got some, like, I mean, think about it. Like, think about coming in this office and be like, I want to go on a snowboard trip with all the black dudes. Look at that. Like, and I want you guys to pay for it. But it happened. So I was just like, cool. Like, I was like, okay, like, honestly, people are listening to me and like thinking what I have to say is important. I think this is important. I don't know if they necessarily understood it to the degree that I was trying to do it because honestly, it probably should have got more pages and thing. But at the same time, like, I think like people love the uniqueness of it and it was something different. And honestly, I think like people were holding their breath, you know, but we went on that trip and we killed it,
Yeah.
you know?
Was that where did a lot of conversations start at that trip about, you know, being black and snowboarding? Like, do you remember that being a theme of your discussion at the time, or?
I mean, I'll tell you the interesting thing, because this is the time that people don't really understand, right? At that time in the 90s, I was still shooting slides, right? And so you're still talking on the phone. This was before internet and email, so I'd send slides out. And my name was Stan Evans, you know, like straight up. Like, it's like super like white guy name. And so I would meet people, I'd send photos, people would buy photos in there, and all of a sudden I'd go to SIA and you could just tell, they were like, oh shit, you're black. Like straight up, like I could see like the thing, like I mean like, dude, you wanna know like that? Randy Torkham from Ride Kind, like literally when I first met him, he's like, oh shit, you're black. Like he didn't say it, but in the eye, like, you know, like thing. And like whatever, you know, think of that. Like I remember going to Bonfire's offices, and I was in Portland one time and I like went and showed up and you could tell, I can't remember who was the marketing manager, but they're like, oh shit, you're black. So like that was my whole thing, like because it was slides and phones and my name was Stan Evans and it seemed like here's the thing, and people like kind of clown and love to make a joke. It's like, oh, you talk like Bryant Gumbel, and I'm like, well, like that's what you have to do if you want to get a job, you know. Like my mom's a school teacher, my dad's in the army, you know. Like they want me to succeed, so they're like, here's what you need to do to get a job because people are not looking for people like you to hire. So you could tell the surprise and people think that, but the beauty of those things is a lot of people, even if they might still hire me, because to me it was more of a merit because I knew I was getting hired on my work.
Yeah.
It wasn't something of, oh, affirmative action or, oh, we're doing like a token or something. It was straight the photos.
Totally.
You know? And so that was an important thing to me, that it was straight the photos and weren't people knew that I was black.
Yeah. So you've had a prolific career, a lot of photos published. You would go on to photo edit at, was it Future or what was it?
No, I had a short stint at Cross Rocket, the digital thing at that. But it was funny because I was a senior here, I was a senior contributor at Snowboarder, and I left that to go to Cross Rocket, and like Bridges was so pissed. Like it was just like funny, but like I mean at the time like I'm just was .com money, and it was just like it was such a good paycheck at the time for what I was doing. I was like, you know, because like snowboarding is not making a bunch of money. Like probably people like for what I was making for that .com at the time here, people would probably fight for right now. It'd be like, what's that like cage match? It'd be like Tina Turner, Mad Max, 2 men enter, 1 man leaves. You know, like so it was good. Like I couldn't turn it down. And the other thing too is I wasn't just senior contributor. They had me on as staff for writing. So like I got to write my own narratives and come up with stuff, but honestly, I think they barely got it launched, and then it ran out of business, and I got laid off, and there it was. And womp womp womp, snowboarding.
Yeah. What, this one might be, you know, I think we can. It's a tough answer, I think, but do you think that you have any sort of response as to? I think we've talked about it a bit, but what it was that moved you beyond snowboarding? What was it? Interactions that you were having, or was it financial? Like, what was it that helped you, you know, internally? What helped you push it to the next level outside of snowboarding? Where did that come from? And I think that's a cool.
I mean,
message.
for like moving on from snowboarding, or just in like, I mean, I think I mean, I'll be completely honest, right? I gave snowboarding everything. Like, I really did try a thing out. I've had 6 knee surgeries. You can look. Like, look at that. I've had 3 ACLs and 3 scopes. And like that. And at a certain point, like, my body was just beaten. Like, you know, like I was putting so much time in there. And like, to operate on that level, like, I mean, like, towards the end, like, shooting with Travis Rice, like, there were times like I feel like I was lucky to come home alive. Like, I'm not even like kidding you. I'm not even kidding you, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just so much of being on the edge, and honestly, just the mental fatigue of like snowboarding is a super dangerous sport. I can tell you the amount of people like Kimi Fasani, broken back, Chris Coulter, ACL, Trevor Andrew, ACL, UC Tarvainen, broken arm. Like, I was a glorified ambulance driver towards the end, you know, like, and it just got to the thing where like I got over seeing people hurt, and I got over trying to be on the edge. Like, it was a thing of like, when you slip at that edge of like that moment of danger, people's lives are in their hand. And also, like, I had a home, I had different things that I wanted to go see, like, you know, like, realistically, like, I just had put so much time in. I did 10 years at over 100 days on the hill each season. You know, like, I put in a lot of time. Like, I've snowboarded more than most people will ever snowboard. Like when casual people, like, you know, like when I lived in the East Coast, be like, hey, you want to go snowboard? And I'm like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's like I don't want to go to Hunter Mountain.
Right.
Like, pretty much if you got a heli or a cat that you're gonna give me some bottomless powder, cool. But realistically, I have no desire to ride hardback these days ever. You know.
Totally.
So, but also I just wanted to go explore different things. And honestly, here's the thing, and it's a really sad part about it, to be completely honest. I got tired of being in a space where I didn't see people that look like me.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like, you get to a point, like, I was living in Utah, and I was like, if I want to have a family or kids and things like that, is this the environment that I want to raise multicultural children, where they're going to be able to understand their uniqueness and people are going to celebrate it, or people will actually go to try and oppress them? And I couldn't answer that question, to be completely honest. And so that's where I moved to New York, and like moved there, and it's just a melting pot of just like amazing people and amazing attitudes and amazing things. And so I really relished that, of meeting and experiencing different people. And I'd still come back to snowboarding like that, but it just, I think that world changed for me, because all of a sudden I realized, like, where snowboarding had been this hotbed of uniqueness and individuality and cool culture, it kind of faded into this thing of, honestly, country club attitudes. Like, you know, like, it's just like, it was really expensive. There's a certain level you had to be at to, one, to make money or enjoy it, at my point, you know, like, you know, like that. And like, I'll be honest, when you've gone and shot and done things with like Coulter or Roman or JP or Travis, like, there was a part of me where, like, if it wasn't dangerous or sketchy, I was bored.
Yeah.
Like, straight up, like, I was bored. I was just like, you know, like, this is boring to me. Like, I just, like, you know?
Yeah.
And so when you got, like, and there just weren't a lot of people around that time who were taking it to that level. And again, I think snowboarding just backed away from it. There was a point, like, right towards the, probably 2010 to 2013, that people were like, I don't really feel like dying today snowboarding.
Yeah, totally.
And like, and then people, just the riders, everyone just backed off, and it became like kind of like Scott Stevens snowboarding.
Yeah, that's
You know?
It was like Enter Scott Stevens.
You know? And like, that was great. And like, honestly, I love that kid. I think it's super unique. But do I want to go stand around in -20 to shoot photos of that? No, it just wasn't like, and like, no discredit to him, thing like that. It just wasn't what I wanted to be. Like, I just like, and also it was like, it got to Groundhog Day.
Totally. Yeah.
You know, like,
I
I was
feel
I was getting too old. Like, I was not that guy from Dazed and Confused, where like the kids were getting younger, and I was standing. I was just like, dude, I'm too old to be hanging out with these kids.
Yeah.
Like, what am I doing?
Yeah. I know we touched on it a bit, but I just think it's a really powerful concept and message, just about your feelings and the significance about being able to come in and kind of have the first black photographer, and only really to speak of with the first black pro. And, you know, is this the most meaningful cover you would say you shot, or, you know, what does it feel like to be able to take part in such a, like, you know, this can't be recreated, and this.
I will say this: the most meaningful cover that I shot in snowboarding. There's two. Like, I mean, like, I'll be honest. Shooting Jeffy's cover before he passed in Japan was super meaningful, and it's two reasons for it. I was still shooting. I shot that on slide film, and when you shoot it and you shoot it on slides, and you have to like take it in and like wait a couple days, but like it was one of those things where I was like, dude, we got a banger. This is like super cool. Like, we got a banger. This is so awesome. Like, I know this is like, it's got cover potential, right?
Yeah.
And so like, went home that night. The next day, I went and drove down to the place to get my slides dropped off and like thing. And you know, I think it was usually like a day turnaround or two, like the days like that. And so I actually found out about Jeffy passing about the same time that I went to go pick up the slides. So it's just this weird mind trip of looking at this thing and having it be such a magical moment, but that he was dead. And so it's like that, and like honestly, like knowing that like I was one of the last people to ever see him, and like that was the moment we shared. If you look at it at the end of Happy Hour, where he does that rail and he comes up and hugs, like it's me who's hugging. And so it's like this, it was like such a sad but amazing moment. And so like it's like one of those places in my heart where I don't really know where to place it. The other one was probably like Travis's cover for Chad's Gap. I mean, it was super meaningful just because here's the whole thing like that. With that cover, you know that we moved the needle of snowboarding. Like the needle had been right here, and all of a sudden, like it just got moved. And so you just like, I mean, and like even to this day, like people aren't doing shit like that. Like, you know, like you see a few people, but it really has not been eclipsed. Like it will hold its own with everyone. And like, and just that day with the amount of pressure and what was going on, like I shot that gap really well. I don't think it could be shot any better.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like I've got a ton of different angles and that. And so like me as a photographer succeeding in getting that done and having it displayed in the magnitude that needed to be done, that was a really proud moment. But also here, you know, like it's just shooting this cover and wanting to get more black people. Like, I mean, this is like the culmination of my dream, to get more black people in the outdoors. And we're actually sitting here, right here, working on it. I mean, it's kind of like Obama being elected. Like, I literally did not think I would see in my lifetime a black president. I hear you, you know, thing like that. So all of a sudden, I am sitting here in this, I mean, I'll just be honest, a hotbed of whiteness.
Yeah.
You know, thing like that. But I look at the things that Russell did and how he inspired me, and like hopefully what I've done and what I've inspired other people, and you can't take that away from us. You know, like people have tried super hard to take it away from me. Like again, I'll walk out of here and I'll go walk in LA and thing like that. And I have friends like thing in New York, and I tell them like I'm the only black snowboarder, and people laugh in my face still to this day because they don't know what I've done and what I've been through and kind of like the sacrifice I put. So actually being able to go lay this down when you guys print this and like show this thing, I'm like, here's what I did and this is what it meant to me. Because the thing about it, when I was doing it, it meant nothing to them, but the whole time I was doing it, I knew I was paving the way for other black people to come after me, and hopefully for them to go and strive and do better beyond me. And so you're leaving a legacy, and so that's where it is important.
Yeah. And that, honestly, that was kind of my final thought and question when you and I talked initially about this, and you saying like what your goal at the end of the day in this was to inspire more people. And I think that's a cool concept to touch on, you know, like what, like at the end of the day, what do you hope that this, and you touched on it, but I think it'd be cool to just reiterate, what do you hope that this issue can do for the black community and for just trying to get people, you know, you kind of made this analogy that was like, if another black photographer picks up a camera and wants to shoot because of this issue, we've won, you know, like.
No, for sure. If we get one, like the goal at my end of this whole like scenario is like that I inspire the next black photographer, because like, dude, I'm gonna be dead and gone sometime soon. I'm like I hope someone picks up the torch. Like, I mean, like that sounds silly to say, but like I've been pretty much kind of out of the game for almost like 10 years. Let's just say, like, completely honest. And no one, because of either economic or stereotype or pressure has picked up the torch. And like that to me is kind of sad, right? But on a bigger level, like that beyond just like myself and like that is like, I will say snowboarding is wonderful. It's a beautiful thing. Like snowboarding, like I'll say this again, snowboarding has given me everything. It gave me a home, it gave me a community, it gave me an interesting look on life, that. And going to these places, seeing these things, snowmobiling like miles in the backcountry, looking off a peak, getting dropped off by a helicopter, scared shitless, but you're gonna make this down, or seeing something of like this magnificent feat of where this person did this amazing thing on this mountainside of like watching poetry in motion, like like that. Like I feel like we should be more inviting of getting minorities in there, women, of LGBTQ, of black people. Like it's like I want all these people to see the things that I saw, and so that's what, like when I was taking photos, I was taking it to these people in these communities, and so I hope they take that as a catalyst to come investigate nature and outdoors and sliding sideways, and it brings them joy, because it brought me a ton of joy.
Yeah, I think, I don't know.
Do you need a Kleenex over there? You'd like about get a tear right there.
Yeah,
it's all good.
No, you nailed it. I think that is kind of. I mean, if there's something you feel like we
I think we nailed it. That's good.
that was really good. Thank you.
Boom. You got an opinion? We'd love to hear it. Leave a comment down below. Subscribe to the Social Studies Show on our YouTube channel.